So today's Tennessee State Standards, first we're looking back, since this is a review, at a 7th grade standard, and that is to apply and extend previous understandings of addition and subtraction to add and subtract rational numbers. Represent addition and subtraction on a horizontal or vertical number line diagram. We are working toward this 8th grade standard to solve linear equations with rational number coefficients, including equations whose solutions require expanding expressions using the distributive property and collecting like terms. And remember, these are always on the wall next to the Promethean board each day that you can refer to. Your lesson objectives: to be able to identify opposites of integers and to evaluate absolute value of integers. So you may need to stop the recording now and write those down. This is an example of a number set, or the number system. First of all, we have our real numbers in the great big rectangle, and real numbers are made up of rational numbers and irrational numbers. Now, rational numbers are made up of natural numbers, whole numbers, integers, and then fractions or decimals that we will learn later. If a number is not part of the real number system, it is an imaginary number, and that is a subset of numbers that you'll learn more about in high school. Your vocabulary for the day. Let me see if I can move this out of the way. There we go. Natural numbers are numbers which can be counted on your fingers. 1, 2, 3, and so on. Now, I want you to think about this for class tomorrow. Is 100 a natural number? The next vocabulary term is whole numbers. All the natural numbers and 0. So it's everything you can count on your fingers, plus we add 0 to the subset. And finally, we have integers. Integers are all the natural numbers and their opposites, which is basically all the positive and negative numbers. There are no fractions or decimals that are integers. So basically, integers go in a negative direction, -1, -2, -3. 0 is in the middle, and then they can go in a positive direction, +1, +2, +3. Now, when will you ever use integers? Well, you use integers to keep scores in sports. Football, for example, if you lose yards, it's negative, but if you gain yards, it's positive. Can anybody think of a sport that uses negative numbers other than football, like to keep score? Think about that, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. You can use it to track temperature change. If temperature goes down, that's negative. If it goes up, that's positive. We use integers to track the stock market, to record weight loss or gain, and to record money withdrawals or deposits in your bank account. Think about whether withdrawals would be positive or negative. Deposits, would they be positive or negative? Now let's talk about absolute value. Absolute value of a number is the distance to 0. Distance can't be negative, so absolute value cannot be negative. And if you notice, -6, or -5, -5 is 5 away from 0. +5 is 5 units away from 0. So, when we evaluate the absolute value, we need to ask ourselves, how far is the number from 0? So, -4 is 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 units away from 0. Three is 1, 2, 3 units away from 0. So -9 would be 9 units away from 0, and 8 would be 8 units away from 0. Now I want you to look at your answers and consider what's a good rule to be able to find absolute value more quickly without having to count it out on the number line? We'll talk about that tomorrow. Here are the your turns for you to complete, and we'll discuss those tomorrow as well. Now we're going to talk about opposites. Two numbers that have the same absolute value but different signs are called opposites. For example, -6 and 6 are opposites because both are 6 units away from 0. The absolute value of -6 is 6, and the absolute value of +6 is 6. So what is the opposite of -10? Nope, don't want to use those. The opposite of -10 would be +10. Now with a positive number, we do not have to put the sign in front of it. The opposite of -35 is +35. The opposite of, is this positive or negative? Since there's no sign, +12, the opposite would be -12. The opposite of +100 would be -100. The opposite of 1 would be -1. But oh wait, the next one is a letter. Can we do an opposite of a letter? Well, is it -x or +x? Since we don't have a sign in front of it, it would be +x. Its opposite would be -x. All right, there are some your turns for you to complete, and we will go over those in class tomorrow. And that concludes our lesson for today.